Okay, I've been trying to make this video again and again, and I'm trying to make people understand, and I don't know how to make people understand this point about bias. Bias does not necessarily mean discrimination. It means certain things favor an individual or group. For instance, in terms of group, because a team is a group. So let's make this analogy. In the NFL, the two teams with home field advantage have an advantage over those who do not have a home field advantage. Okay? That is a bias towards the home team. So if a team has to beat and a wild card team has to beat 4 teams all the way up to the AFC Championship or the NFL Championship, they still were at a disadvantage. They still had bias against them. Okay, and the reason why the home team has an advantage is because, and this has been studied and evaluated, the home team usually has the refs that are going to be biased towards them. The home team has the crowd that is going to obviously be biased towards them, so they have that extra motivation. That does not mean that a visiting team that has a lesser record and is on the road cannot beat the home team. The disadvantage does not mean you cannot overcome it. I mean, immigrants are at a disadvantage in this country. I'm going to be very blunt with you. They are, obviously. All immigrants. The African immigrants, the Mexican immigrants, the European immigrants. Because they're not familiar with the American culture. Okay? They have every reason to fail academically. Okay? They have every reason to fail occupation-wise. But they don't. They overcome the disadvantage. That does not eliminate the disadvantage. So when race realists bring up the fact that Japanese score better on cultural bias tests towards whites, that does not disprove that the advantage is toward whites. I mean, just because you can overcome a disadvantage does not mean, in any means, that the bias toward whites does not exist. The bottom line is that test was created in the Western nations. How hard is that to understand? It's not objective. Stop kidding yourself. It's not objective. Okay? Asians can outscore whites in that test, and it's still not objective. It still is biased towards whites. That's not a black militant, hate whitey ideologue. That's a fact. Just like if, a rap contest, in terms of rap poetry, would be biased toward African Americans in the ghetto. It would be. Because the familiarity, getting a suburban kid who's not, used to that lingo, or even if they're more familiar, they're familiar with that lingo, and even they're a fan of that music, black or white, but disproportionately amount of whites, you still don't have the internal grasp of what standards or what creates great rap poetry. Okay, and if a white person from the suburbs happens to win, that means they overcame an advantage toward blacks. So this notion that the IQ test is not biased because Asians outperform whites is idiocy. Have a nice day.